What's up, guys? We're back once again to r/malicious compliance. So I forgot to say this yesterday, but we just hit the 9K subscriber point, and we are less than 1,000 subs away from the big 10,000 milestone. This channel is growing bigger and better with each passing day, this mic for instance, and I've got even some bigger changes than that in the weeks to come. I won't be getting into that today, but just know there are a lot of plans on the horizon. Anyways, let's get the stories going for the day, and of course stick around because we got our bonus after. Alright, without wasting any more time, let's get into the stories. See you in a bit. Check your contracts, government salary employees. So I work IT in a public school. I'm a 12-month employee who works 40 hours a week, 5 days. I'm constantly staying late, sometimes an hour or more, or coming in early. I don't get any overtime, but sometimes the job calls to be late. No big deal in my eyes. I get a half-hour lunch, salaried at 55K. Most days I bring my lunch in, but sometimes I don't have any leftovers or anything to bring in. There's a convenience shop that sells sandwiches and chips, which I usually go to whenever I don't bring in lunch. Since the sandwiches are made by order, they don't have the option to call in, so you have to wait for it. It takes around 12 or 13 to get there and back, so before my break, lunch is at 12 noon every day, I run to the shop, get a sandwich and a Coke before my lunch break, and come back in time for lunch. Now, this isn't every day, it's pretty rare, maybe twice a month. My boss knows I stay late and never ask for overtime or anything like that. He told me staying late was part of my job when necessary. I usually don't have an issue with him, but today I did. I ran out at 11:45, got a sandwich, came back and took lunch from 12 to 12:30. When I was just getting off my lunch, he called me into his office, asked me what time I went on lunch, told him what time. Then he asked me if I ran out before my break. I told him I did. He told me he was writing me up for stealing time for running out before my break. This is strange, considering this has never been a problem and I've never gotten a write-up. So I tell him that's fine, and he has to do what he has to do. Then I decide to look at my contract. Guess what? I get 2 15-minute breaks in addition to my half-hour lunch. So now I'll be taking a 15-minute break whenever I feel like, thanks to my union. My neighbor wanted to call a professional to mark their property line. My parents agreed. This was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with tight space in between our house and the neighbor's house, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants, costing thousands, but my parents thought it would be worth it. A week later, my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. My father was furious and marched down to our neighbor's house. He told my father the plants were on his property line. Therefore, he had the right to take them down. He warned that if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. Later that day, my father called the company that put in the plants, and with the warranty, we could have them replanted next week for no charge. We made sure there was no way it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later, we caught him chopping them down at 2 a.m. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor, he decided to call a professional to mark his property line. My father agreed. A few days later, I got home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over our property line. We watched as he took down his fence, completely furious. Within the next month, we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing 1/4 of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost 10K for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. TLDR, my neighbor chopped down our plants because he claimed we were on his property. After calling a professional, he lost 11 feet of his backyard and had to pay for destruction of property, and we got to keep our plants. Deal with it or quit. Fine, it will only cost you more. This happened last summer. I was working with a bunch of different doctors to staff a hospital in the city. Hospitals and ER docs. Things were going well, and the hospital was raking in record profits and had completed a major expansion because business was increasing. There was a shakeup in the administration of the hospital, and the new folks decided they needed to make some changes. In order to increase their margins, they decided to cut the number of doctors per shift. They also decided to save money by cutting support staff, thus greatly increasing our non-medical workload, billing, coding, etc. Oh, and by the way, no increase in compensation. Obviously, these changes didn't go over well. With the hospital expanding, the volume of patients was going up, and we needed more docs. It was in fact endangering the patients because the onerous workloads would give us less time per patient. Despite our protests, the CEO and CFO were having none of it. They fired the chief medical officer and also got rid of the hospitalist and ER directors. The message was clear: put up or shut up. We had a very contentious meeting, and the CEO basically said that if we can't deal with it, we should quit. Immediately, several doctors quit. Others kept working while looking for new positions. Several of us ended up at rival hospitals right down the road. Initially, the admin kept a brave face as resignations kept coming in. At first they could manage, but soon we were running into huge staffing issues. They tried quickly hiring new candidates, but people aren't stupid. They knew something was up when they realized so many openings were available. Also, word travels fast in the local medical community. The amount of work they were expecting each docs to do per shift was getting extremely dangerous, making the job less attractive. So winter rolls around, and it is the busiest time of the year for any hospital. They desperately needed staffing, but they can't find doctors fast enough. So they have no choice but to hire locum tenens doctors, docs who work on short-term contracts. Unfortunately for them, locums actually cost about double what a permanent doctor does. Even they were hard to come by because of how much the job sucked. In addition, they had to offer up huge sign-on bonuses to get new hires in order to get people interested. And finally, we come to the part that gives me the most satisfaction. They were so desperate that they had to come to docs who already quit. We still had out-hospital privileges, and we knew the system. We were willing to help, but only for an incentive pay, much more than our usual compensation. I had planned on going on vacation before starting my new job, but I couldn't pass up the financial windfall of all those incentives. Let's just say it was a very profitable holiday season for me. These cost measures ended up being tremendously expensive for the hospital. Between hiring paying tenants, doctors, incentive pay, and recruitment costs, the hospital ended up spending way more than it otherwise would have. The hospital admin had quietly rolled back all the changes, and now they've in fact increased the number of doctors per shift. Don't shed a tear for the hospital or admin though. They're still doing tremendously well for themselves. TLDR, hospital drastically cut staffing while the volume of patients is increasing. Everybody quits, and the hospital ends up paying out the nose to find adequate staffing. Doing too many hours? So, a bit ago, I used to work in healthcare. We were allowed to work up to 55 hours a week. And so, I would usually pick up around 3 to 4 extra shifts a month, just to pay for treats and extras. I always made sure I never did too many hours and that I always felt well in myself. Until a new senior nurse started from elsewhere in the hospital. She was quite brittle with all the staff, bringing in arbitrary new rules and just generally being rude until she wanted something. Then her tone changed as if she were sweetness and light. She started telling staff that picked up more than one extra shift a month that they were doing too many hours and that we had to pick up fewer hours as it didn't reflect well in the department to have permanent staff working so much. She said this in the most condescending tone possible. I tried explaining the policy of the hospital, but she didn't listen. Just said, "Well, I'm the senior nurse on this ward and this is how it is now." And to be honest, it wasn't worth my while just working one extra shift. So I stopped. I also stopped staying behind to help, as long as I wasn't impacting on patient safety or others apart from her. Got loads of notes to write? Too bad, I'm finished now. See you later. Got some samples for pharmacy? Think you'll be running those yourself. It all came to a head one day when, as I was getting ready to leave, she asked me to work a shift the next day. She said that she'd asked a staffing agency, but they couldn't send anyone, and no one else wanted to pick up shifts. Then came the sweetness. "Please, Mockingbird Bay, please. Otherwise, I will have to do it, and I'm meant to be going to XYZ tomorrow." I stopped. I smiled. I just said, "Well, I can't do too many hours, and you are the senior nurse," and left. Funnily enough, she never questioned me picking up shifts again. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed those last few stories. Now, to make it fair for having neckbeards for yesterday's episode, today we're going to be coming on back to r/nice girls. Let's do it. Guys, let me give you a pro tip. Never say no to the girl you're dating or your girlfriend. Saying things that basically mean no, like "I'll have to wait and see" or "I can't do it right now." Saying literally no is actually disrespectful. You're welcome. You guys may hate on her, but she makes some valid points. For instance, "Do I look fat in this dress?" I'll just have to wait and see. Heterosexuality is Stockholm Syndrome. All heterosexual women are hostages and they don't realize it. You know, this is the female version of the guy who says, "Oh, she's lesbian. She hasn't met me yet." Confession 1175. Okay, I know you can't help who you fall for, but it's so annoying when short girls are dating tall guys. Sweetie, you're 5'4". Could you date a guy who's 5'8" and still go good in heels? Please give us 5'10" girls your 6'3" plus guys. Wow, we've got so much in common, and our chemistry is, just great. Let me get out my measuring tape and see. Ooh, yeah, you're a little too tall to ride this ride. See you later. How tall are you? How big are your tits? Thank you for failing my test. My boyfriend is conducting a study on toxic men and how they can get really defensive when asked about their height and tend to try to offend women by asking about commonly known insecurities in women, like weight, or degrading them by asking about their chest size. That's what you did. Thank you for being a part of examples on what not to do. I hope you become less toxic one day. The irony on here is palpable. Am I the only one who thinks it's completely normal to ask about height and ask about weight? And if you're comfortable with the person enough, ask about chest size? Because these are questions you probably want to know if you're going to date someone. When you try to be independent and say you'll pay for your own food, and he agrees. Where does this guy get off thinking he can just split the bill between two people? What does he think this is, a consensual adult relationship? Disgusting. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video for the day. If you like what you heard, consider subscribing, ringing the bell icon. Keep in touch, and I'll be back tomorrow with some more sweet videos. And with that, I will see you tomorrow. Peace out.